Hi, I'm Attorney Colleen Gallo, and with me I have Larry Minnich, who is one of the principals at Central Medical. And we're not here to talk about emergency services today. The nature of the reason why we wanted to come and talk to the county commissioners is Central Medical received a complaint from the Attorney General's office back in July. And its concern was that the complaint was driven by one of the county commissioners. And Central Medical felt that as a constituent of the county, that it would have been better served by one of the county commissioners who made the complaint to reach out to that particular facility. At this point it was Central Medical, to see if the dispute could have been resolved, because by putting a complaint into the Attorney General's office, obviously they had to expend resources and monies to defend a claim, which again came to be meritless. So the purpose of our coming here today was to say, hey, if a county commissioner has an issue or receives a complaint from a constituent, that perhaps maybe instead of filing a complaint with the Attorney General's office, perhaps pick up the phone and try to get it resolved that way. I know certainly Central Medical would have preferred to try to resolve it amicably instead of, investing all these resources. So that's why we're here today, and I wanted to share that with you.
Okay, just for the record, I was not the one that did that. I'm not Bill Ames?
No.
Oh.
Just for the record, I was not the one that filed that complaint either.
Okay.
Okay, and again, just so you know, the Attorney General's office, when they send the complaint form, they identify who made the complaint. So that's how they knew. So again, we just would hope that in the future, if something like that comes again, that perhaps they reach out to the individual in efforts to resolve it instead of having a company or individual have to invest resources to defend these types of claims.
Would you like to respond to this?
I hear you. However, I was the conduit for a complaint. It was not my complaint.
Well, it was, though, because it was from you, signed by you, to the State Attorney General's office. So, in my mind, that would institute the fact that it actually was you that filed the complaint.
I hear you. I had an elderly woman in her 80s who approached me, was not on the internet, and needed assistance. I simply facilitated for a constituent, and I could not tell her how to think or what to do. I facilitated her complaint.
But the complaint had no factual information in it whatsoever. And so, again, I don't want to speak to Colleen, but this is the file on this now, and everything that was in that complaint was addressed, but there wasn't one factual part of the complaint that you listed. So I guess my question would be, why would somebody in your position facilitate a complaint that had actually no facts that were accurate in it whatsoever? I mean, there wasn't one fact other than probably the lady's name and address that was actual, and that was where Colleen was involved in.
Again, I facilitated a constituent, and the woman asked for some help, and I facilitated. I didn't think it was my place to tell her she was wrong. I had no idea, and passed it on.
Well, I think that's the problem. I think the no idea part is the problem. I mean, certainly Medicare and medical billing is the ugly part of what we do, including our good friends here at First Aid. But the idea first is to respond to a call and to facilitate taking care of a patient, and the billing is something that comes out of that secondary. But both First Aid and ourselves are governed by Medicare laws and rules and regulations that you're probably not aware of, but yet were listed in the complaint. And in fact, your resolution, solution to the problem, if would have been interacted, would have constituted Medicare fraud. And so I think that before you go out to help someone, and I acknowledge that you do that as your role as a commissioner, but I think that there has to be a fair amount of due diligence and at least a couple of questions answered before such a letter would go out to such a high level entity as the Attorney General's office.
Well, Again, I hear you and I respect that, and will certainly take that under advisement. I made a judgment to facilitate a woman who did not have the internet that wanted to file the complaint. And in fact, I don't think the complaint was against you. And it turned out that she thought she was being billed twice for the same service. And in fact, I learned through the Attorney General when they called back that there were 2 levels of care given, and you were there first, but then they needed a higher level of care, and the person who the complaint was filed against was then brought in, and they had a very legitimate billing. So I don't think the complaint was against you.
Actually, it was. We were asked to respond to a complaint that was forwarded to the State Attorney General's office by you.
I did forward it. I admit that.
So you're not suggesting, I just want to be clear, that she does not respond to a constituent. You're just suggesting it would have been a courtesy to you to call first instead of going to, is that what you're?
Yeah, because I think if she would have contacted the appropriate entities involved, it may have been resolved without having to go to the level of filing an Attorney General complaint. And again, I'm sure First Aid may have had to utilize resources in responding to this as well. And I think it could have been resolved had a phone call been made to the entities involved instead of, again, wasting resources. And that's our point.
And taking that one step further, and not to belabor this, but unfortunately, there's getting to be more and more ambulance calls in Lebanon County. Tuesday was a prime example, Mr. Dodd, I'm sure, is aware. And when those things happen, you need to call in resources from other areas, including Lifeline or possibly South Central or Northwest, Schaeferstown, Myerstown, all that be. Okay. The billing question that arose in this complaint will happen almost on a regular basis all of the time. So why was one particular one? I know that this lady reached out to you, but there could be, if that's the case, hundreds of people reaching out to you, because Lifeline was in Lebanon County on at least 2 or 3 calls on Tuesday, and the same bill will be generated by Lifeline for the services that they provided. So are you going to file a complaint with the State Attorney General's office about those bills when those people get them?
Again, my bigger concern is I think it could have been resolved in a more appropriate manner as opposed to filing.
That's what I thought you were asking.
Yes. So,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Bill.
I just have a concern. Certainly, I think all 3 of the county commissioners have very passionate concerns for our constituents. And understanding this as I do, I think it would be appropriate for any county commissioner to aid and assist one of our constituents, and taking into account the fact that the person was in her 80s, etc. But I don't think it's appropriate for any of us to file a direct complaint with the Attorney General on the behalf of a constituent. It would have been far better advised to seek out someone or advise someone who could assist this person in fact filing the complaint or resolving the complaint if necessary. So I feel that this reflects on the entire board. So I'm not real comfortable with Commissioner Litz's actions in this case.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm Larry Minnich. I wear many hats. One of them is the mayor of Cleona. And this is now carried over to Cleona Borough, and it's also carried over to South Danville Township. So it's progressed much further than a simple letter, if it is such a thing as a simple letter to a State Attorney General's office. So now it's a much, much bigger issue. But my question is aren't the residents of Cleona, myself, or my wife, Kathy Minnich, or Central Medical, aren't we constituents of the county as well?
That question's to you, Bill, I think.
I mean, I think we are.
I think that's what he was saying.
Absolutely, sure. We are elected to represent all of the residents of Lebanon County. So I'm not in any way indicating that you should not be represented as well, and you should be treated fairly. And I feel in this case, you know, from my seat at least, it doesn't appear that you were treated fairly.
I appreciate that.
You know, to have the weight, if you would, of an elected official with this complaint going to the Attorney General, I think was not really a fair way to handle this. Certainly, the person that had the complaint should have filed it through. And if she's in her 80s and not capable, Commissioner Litz could have perhaps advised her to seek out someone, or even helped her find someone to file the complaint. But certainly, for Commissioner Litz to file the complaint and sign it, I think was out of line. That's just my position.
Well, I think in their position is that it should have been done at the local level first, and if unresolved, then go where you have to go, but at least give it the principles.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
always better to solve things at the lowest level possible. Exactly.
All right.
Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
We covered it. Thank you. And 2 weeks ago, this is the last public comment. I'm doing this on behalf of a constituent who came in at the end of our meeting 2 weeks ago, and he was not aware of the timing of our meeting and so on, so he just wanted to air out an issue that he had. He was going to come here this morning to apologize for if he offended anyone, and so on behalf of Kirk Goshert, I'm apologizing for if he offended anybody by his, maybe he considered it an outburst. It was mild. To me, it was not, didn't rise to that level. But he could not be here this morning, and so he was asking me to do that before it got too old. So that's what I'm doing on his behalf. Okay, we will now seek anybody else for public